This is a one-speaker meeting. Please welcome our speaker tonight, John.
My name is John. I'm an alcoholic. And I am sober today by the grace of God and by the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm happy to be here. And I'm looking for the page that tells me when I'm supposed to shut up. I know, give me a sign. Meetings start on time and they end on time. That's the way it is. It's really funny. All the things that Mickey just said about Sean are true for Mickey. You guys should have seen him when he showed up. We are not talking vision for you here, okay? I did, however, win money because during his first month, I asked him. I went right up to him and I asked him. I said, "Are you going to stay?" And he looked me right dead in the eye and he said, "Yes." So I covered a couple of bets. And when he took a cake for a year, why, people came up and said, "We were wrong, you were right," and they gave me the money. I should have bet heavier. For all of you who keep count, I got sober on August the 18th of 1974. Which this summer will make me sober 34 years. And that's really important to me. It is not important to 7-Eleven. I just stopped down there at 7-Eleven. They still wanted $1.39 for a 16-ounce cup of coffee. It's enormously important for the hot little chick that I drove down here with tonight, who's leading the meeting, who happens to be my daughter. And so for all you boys who think she's really cute, I need to tell you that I am a combat Marine veteran from Vietnam. And although I have not taken anybody down in 40 plus years, I can come out of retirement in a heartbeat. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was brought to Alcoholics Anonymous. That'd be more accurate. In 1974, I had managed to drink myself into a condition known as alcoholic paralysis. And I see a couple of heads shaking, so you know what I'm talking about. For the rest of you, you don't need to know. If you do ever want to experience alcoholic paralysis, call me. I'll tell you how to do it. It involves drinking nonstop. Passing out is okay, but the minute you come to, you got to get right after it again. And you can only eat the kind of stuff they sell on the bar in saloons, okay? And if you will just keep that up for about 40 days or so, why, you'll wake up one morning and your head will say, "Okay, let's get out there and go get them again." And your body will say, "Well, you go ahead, fool, but we're staying here." And that's what happened to me. They came and they, with their little fold-down bed, and they got me out of my little house. This was in Bozeman, Montana, where everybody drinks with both hands and both feet, and that is normal drinking. Nobody even looks at you unless you're using a curb for a pillow. It's just kind of the way it is. And they took me off to the hospital where I was there for 6 days. And I would love to tell you that I had hundreds of people stop by to inquire about my well-being, and I would love to tell you that I had to rent the room next door for all the flowers. That's what I would love to tell you. But the truth is, and I hope it is the truth for all of you, that during that last couple of years, when everything seems reasonable, and you kind of leave everybody that cares about you, you leave them broken and bloody and laying on the side of the highway, that was my story. So the truth is, I had one visitor. One. And you're all going to laugh when I tell you who it was. It was the Budweiser distributor of Bozeman, Montana. Now, when I came home from overseas, my heart was black and hard. And I tried to be normal. I mean, it's still an amazement to me that they let people like me walk around loose on the street. And it is amazing that I did not harm anyone permanently. Alcohol saved my life. I'm just tell you that. Alcohol saved my life. I could actually literally feel this stuff, whatever it was, crawling up inside of me. And when it would get right up to here somewhere, man, I would take a drink or 12. Whew, and everything calmed down. And it was all your fault. I mean, you got to understand it was your fault. There are probably some veterans here in the room. My truth is that I was in Vietnam for 17 months. And while you're in a situation like that, your survival computer goes on high monster alert, and it stays there. And so when you come home, although it comes down, it never goes down to where it was. And so I would stand around and I would know 20 seconds before you turned around and knocked the glass off the bar that you were going to do it. And I could not, for the life of me, figure out why you didn't know it. And so I just considered all of you like, I didn't want to be around you. You were dangerous, you know. And so that plays right into the old isolation of alcoholism, you know, and I had found my little, I tried marijuana, but it hurt my throat, you know, or I'd have been an addict too. The last few years, the last 5 years, I was trying to go to college because I was trying to be normal in Bozeman. And this friend of mine, who's also a Vietnam veteran, he stopped by one day and he said, listen, I'm really bored. I said, yeah, me too. And so we started a nightclub, which is a really great business for an alcoholic. And it was a big old nightclub. You know, it was like a half city square block, and you know, put 1,500 people on the dance floor. It was a big deal. That's where I met the Budweiser guy. Any of you ever been in the saloon business? We used to run 22 half barrels of Budweiser out of there a night. We're talking big here, okay? And this guy, I'd call him anytime, day or night, and they'd come in. They built racks so this stuff would roll around, and they'd bring in extra glasses, and they'd do all this stuff, and so on and so forth. And then one time, while in a blackout, I ended up owning another nightclub in Great Falls, Montana, right outside of the main gate of the Malmstrom Air Force Base. And then this other veteran came to see us, and he said to me, he said, listen, how long do you think it would take you to change some thousands of dollars in big bills into small bills? And I said, oh, 2-3 days. He said, would you do it for me? I said, sure. So he gave me a bunch of big bills, and 2-3 days later, I gave him a bunch of little bills. About a week later, he came back and he gave me an envelope. He said, here, this is your cut. And he gave me $6,000. Which doesn't sound like much today, but that was 4 brand new cars back then. So I immediately said to him, what the hell business are you in? And whatever it is, it probably needs to be run a bit more like a business with high military efficiency. And so we ended up being in the illegal substance transportation business. I'll let you guys work that one out. And this Budweiser guy just intrigued me, because nothing seemed to throw this guy. I mean, he just never hurried, and he never worried. And he didn't have big emotional highs, and he didn't have big emotional lows, and he had a little wife, and he didn't fool around on her, and he had a couple kids, and he went to their ball games, and he was just a square. But if he gave his word, he kept his word. And so here I am laying in this stupid hospital, and he came in, it was a Thursday, and he sat down, and I know now that what he had done is he'd sat out there in the hallway and read that chapter on working with others to remind himself to come in so he could kill me really bad. And so he came in the little room, and he was there for about a half an hour, and he only talked about him. He did not talk about me. He didn't tell me I was a moral leper. He didn't tell me I had no willpower, none of that stuff. He just told me about his life. And he finished up by saying, you know, he said, the problem is that the people I loved the most are the people I hurt the most. And I don't know why he didn't just crawl up on top of the bed and just drive a stake right through my heart, because that was my story, you know. And so when he was leaving, he said, listen, I've checked, and they're going to let you out of here this afternoon, and this is your lucky day, because tonight is our one meeting a week of Alcoholics Anonymous in Bozeman, Montana. And if you got nothing else to do, I'd love to take you to the meeting. Right? And I don't even know why I said okay. And I am one of those disgustingly fortunate people that from that day until this, I have not taken a drink, a pill, a fix, a joint, a whatever. Now, I didn't say I haven't found it necessary, because quite a few times I have found it necessary to take a drink, a pill, a joint, a fix, or whatever. I just haven't fucking done it. And I wanted to be sure to say fucking, because this is my new current pet peeve. It used to be Hazelton literature on the literature tables. I have a reputation, I'm sorry. But it seems like in the last 5 years or so, 10 years or so, we have gotten a lot more people who forgot what they used to be like. And I just want to point out, if you are new, the only requirement for membership in Alcoholics Anonymous is a desire to stop drinking. Nothing else. Nothing. You do not have to become a saint. You do not have to join some church. You do not have to carry around a little scorecard to find out how many times so-and-so cusses or whatever. Okay? Bottom line, the only requirement for membership in Alcoholics Anonymous is a desire to stop drinking, period. Now, having said that, the Budweiser guy took me to my first meeting. And it was in somebody's house, and they had rearranged the furniture, and there were these 10 little guys and me, all old people. Old people. Like my age now. And I have no earthly clue what it is they talked about that night, nothing at all. I just remember feeling safe and being kind of surrounded by this calmness that I had not experienced in a long time. And so in the car on the way back, the guy says to me, he said, listen, I can't, if you want to go to the meeting tomorrow, I'll give you a map, because I can't go with you. You know, and I'm thinking, map? Bozeman? What? He said, no, the meeting's not in Bozeman. The meeting is 30 miles over the mountain in Livingston, Montana. And I said, okay, so he gives me this little map, and I'm thinking, yeah, right. Okay. But the next morning I woke up, and I went to the bank, and I got the money for that night's business, and I went over to the saloon, and the woman that we hired to cut up all the fruit and all that stuff, she was there. She says, do you want a beer? And I looked, and it was almost 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I hadn't had anything to drink yet. Miracle. Miracle. Okay? Parting of the Red Sea, nothing compared to it being 4:30 in the afternoon and me not having had anything to drink yet. So I thought, well, so later that night I'm in my little car driving over the mountain 30 miles to Livingston, Montana, to my second AA meeting, which was held in a converted chicken coop stuck on the side of this church. This was a huge meeting. There were 6 whole people at this meeting. And they were happy to see me. "Oh, welcome," stuck their hand out, put their arm around me, brought me right in, gave me coffee, even though I was a little shaky. And at the end of the meeting, there's a guy says to me, he says, "Hey, do you want to go to the meeting with us tomorrow night?" And by now I had a whole day and a half, almost 2 days sober, so I was smart enough to say, "Where is the meeting?" Tomorrow. He said, "Oh, it's in Butte, Montana." And this is the night I met my first old-timer. Now, if you're new, you really need to know this, so pay very careful attention. You have to be able to identify and pick out old-timers because they are evil. You just need to know that. They're just evil people. And I met my first one that night because the guy said, "Oh, the meeting's in Butte, Montana." And my mouth came open and said, "That's 86 miles down the freeway." And then I heard this voice, and this is exactly how you identify old-timers. They all sound exactly like Reagan. They start every time they're going to stab you in the heart, they start out with, "Well." So I said, "That's 86 miles down the freeway," and I hear this voice, "Well, I've driven further than that to drink. Have you?" And before I could turn around and see who it was, he had turned around, and all I saw was this old codger kind of walking off. And so the next night, I'm in a caravan. Man, there's like 3 or 4 cars, and we're busting chops 86 miles down the road to go to a meeting in Butte, Montana. I got to hurry, though, because I really want to talk about something else tonight. Normally don't do that, but tonight I want to talk about something else. Anyway, I stayed sober there in Montana about 35 days. And my partner in the illegal substance transportation business, he did not understand the consequences of taking depressant chemicals. He was one of these all guys, Seconal, Tuinal, which I don't even know if they're still around anymore, but there were a lot of alls back in the day. And he kept eating these depressant chemicals, and so consequently, guess what? He got depressed. And he was carrying around a lot of that stuff that combat veterans carry around with them. And so to stop that, he decided to nosedive his brand new sports car off a 40-foot cliff. He did not kill himself, however. He ended up unconscious and in a half coma in the hospital, running his mouth about our illegal substance transportation business. And just to show you what a loving guy, I came to AA and was allowed in. My first thought when I heard what was happening, my very first thought was, how can I go in there and take him down? And one more or less, to somebody like me wouldn't make any difference at all. I could still find him today if I wanted to. He's in the Veterans Administration Hospital in Goldendale, Washington, and he is a vegetable. And I loved him then, and I love him now. He never got the opportunity that I got to get a new life. Because that's what we got here for you. If you're new, what we got here is a new life, brand new. So far beyond your imagination, don't even bother wasting time trying to figure it out. So anyway, I had to leave Montana late at night, and I beat feet for Southern California. And you know, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. It's like God's umbrella over my head got bigger. There was always one there, which I didn't know, but there was always this umbrella carrying me through, and this umbrella just got bigger. And I ended up over at the old Culver City Clubhouse, the West Side Lano Club, which used to be at the corner of Vinton and Culver. And back then, they didn't have morning meetings, didn't have cell phones. As a matter of fact, the other night I was at a meeting and I just went in, wandered in, sat down, and there's like 3 people sitting next to me, and they all got their little phones out and they're doing this text thing, you know. They have no idea how close they came to me just snapping their little necks. What the hell are you guys all laughing about? Just anyway, they didn't have morning meetings then. They didn't have that many noon meetings then. They had about 400 meetings a week in all of Southern California then. And they were printed, they were typed up, and then they were run through a mimeograph machine. This is before Xerox, okay? We're talking way back in the day, probably before the day, but way back there. And the meetings were smaller, but the thing that was so interesting is you would go to a meeting and there'd be like maybe 25 people there, and half of them would have 20 years. Okay, so it's like I learned really early that this is the greatest lending library in the world. Because if I didn't know something, or I didn't know how to live, or I didn't know how to work this program in relationship to whatever problem was going on, man, I could just poke the person next to me who had like 20 years and had gone through all this experience stuff, and all I had to forfeit to find out the answers was a little bit of ego. It was like amazing. I met this man who became my sponsor. His name was Fred Ellis. And he had this sponsor named Jack Bailey. And I met all these other guys. They're not around. If I have any sadness in my life for the new people in AA, it is not about any of the changes that go on in AA. It is about all the really cool people you're not ever going to get to meet. See? I mean, so many times, so many stories. We got busy. This Fred Ellis said to me, he said, listen, son, if you want to stay, you got to fulfill the conditions of sobriety. And that means you have to work these steps. No half measures, you got to work these steps. And I will show you how to do that. And so we started doing that. You know, boom, 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 boom. You know, and I put up a fight just like everybody else. You know, I wasn't going to write that inventory until somebody said, listen, fool, just write down all the shit you're telling people at coffee after the meeting. He said, probably tone it down because we're shooting for honesty here. And so I wrote this little goofy inventory, and I guarantee you I was not going to share it with God and him. I guarantee you I wasn't going to do that as I walked right up the front steps of his house and walked in and shared the damn inventory. Right? I can remember I did make a tiny change when I made my list, my amends list. I actually made 2. I made one which I called emotional amends. You know, that's where I, you know, tramped all over your heart. And then I made physical amends. That's where I punched you in the nose or stole your money. And the reason I did that was because I wanted to really get those out of the way in a hurry because, ta-da, the promises. In the book it says, before we are halfway through. And most people think, oh, first 6 steps. No, before you are halfway through the 9th step. And so I got busy calling up people and making my amends and this and that and making my little game plan on how I'm going to pay off these debts. That's a whole other funny story too, because I had to work hard at that. I remember I owed one of the big oil companies some money, and I sent them a quarter of the money with a letter saying, listen, I harmed you and this and that and blah, 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 and here's a quarter of it, and next month, the next quarter, and so forth. They sent the damn check back. Well, we wrote that off 3 years ago, blah, 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 blah. And I wrote right back, I don't give a shit what you did. I am going to make direct amends. You give it to somebody else. I don't care what you do. And I got another letter back. Oh, we've donated that to the blah, 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 blah. Well, then I get all done with all those amends, and by now I'm like 2.5, 3 years sober. And please understand, I'm not talking about little stuff here. I owed the Liquor Control Board of the state of Montana $38,000, which in like 1977, 1978 is a lot of money. And I just kept making deals with God. You know, it was like, you know, if you throw me some extra dough, I will retire these debts. And dough started falling all over me. Here, you never stop learning. I don't care how long you're sober, you never stop learning. Just recently, you'd think I'd learned this a little earlier. Not 3 months ago, I'm sitting at my desk one day and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? Not one time when you have humbly asked God for help has it not showed up. Not one time. I'm so stupid that sometimes I'm asking and I don't even know I'm asking. And then boom, the solution shows up and I go, damn, look at that, the solution to that thing. Oh, God just took care of it. Okay. Well, when I got all done with those financial amends, I knew in my little heart of hearts that there must be $1,500 or $2,000 that I had stolen or embezzled that I just had no memory of. And I didn't feel good about that. And I was in the construction business then. And they were building this building, which was originally going to be called the George Freight Memorial Westside Alano Club. And they were behind schedule and over budget. And so I said to myself, I will come down there and I'll bring my 3 little guys with me and we will work our little asses off and I'll pay my own guys out of my own pocket till this thing is finished, and then I'm going to call that debt done. And for those of you who come here and enjoy the fellowship of this place, I want to tell you that it opened on July the 1st of 1977. And there were little picnic tables in here and little, they were having their little potluck dinner and all their little cake and this and that and the other thing. And I was still not all that wrapped too tight, so I was, of course, standing outside with T-Bird Joe. God, you guys all miss T-Bird Joe. And we're standing out here, and we see this kid riding his bicycle down the street doing this. A little bumping into shit, falling off, getting up. Joe gives me a little elbow. He said, let's capture this kid. I said, okay. So we get him off his little bike and we put him in the little doorway right next door, which used to be a map store company, made maps. And we 12-stepped this kid, whose name was Sean D., and he's still sober. Tiki, shut up. You know he's working at. There used to be a restaurant upstairs. It was really hard to come here and do the work because I had a little argument going with him at the time. Next door used to be an auto parts store, Brill Automotive, and John Brill, a wonderful guy, owned this lot. And he agreed to subordinate the title to the Westside Alano Club, Inc. if we would pay for a big life insurance policy on him so that when he died, his heirs would get paid off and so forth. And it was our job to raise the money then to build this building. So somebody came up with this keen idea, and this is when I got the phone call. I want you to see this right here. This is one of the Charter Life member cards. Note that it is made out of metal. And what they did is they wanted to get like 300 people together who could each pump up $300, which was a lot of money, right? And that was where they were going to get the money to build this building. So I'm sitting home one night, I get the call, we got it from a guy named Bob F., who's a really great guy now, but Bob said, oh, we're trying to sell these 300 tickets or 300 lifetime memberships, $300 a piece, blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, who are you making them available to? And he said, oh, just certain people. We don't want any of the riffraff. I said, Bob, we are the riffraff. You fucking idiot. What is your story? Anyway, I don't want to spend any more time on that. I just want to tell you that I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love Alcoholics Anonymous, and I love its people. And I help people to better positions in their life and so on and so forth, just like it talks about in the book when they're ready. When I was speaking over at Rodeo, we got to talking about taping. The whole business of taping got started back when they were using those reel-to-reel big thingy-dingies. And in part, that got started over at Rodeo because of a guy I sponsor who is going to be 33 years sober here pretty soon. And he started Alcoholics Anonymous in Taiwan. And he used to go to this little meeting hall that he rented Tuesday nights and Friday nights. And he sat there all by himself just listening to tapes that we would send for 2 years before the first little Chinese guy kind of crept in who couldn't even speak English. Okay? In the book, it talks about how a whole new society of friends will grow up around you. And I didn't believe it because I didn't believe I was worthy of having friends. All right? And now, it's like I get to go all over the planet. I know people all over the world. I keep running into Bush. And I was speaking at a meeting in Stockholm. And the guy says, I walked in, he said, oh, we're glad you're here, this and that, blah, blah. He said, do you know Mickey Bush? He was here last week. I said, well, I'm glad you got him now that he's clean. My biggest secret, you know you're as sick as your secret, so my biggest secret is that no matter what I did around this place, no matter how much I worked those steps, no matter all the stuff, I knew that I could just never, ever measure up as just a normal person. That was my big secret. And I remember they didn't used to do birthdays all the time now. They used to do birthdays one night a month, and so on and so forth. And over at the old motion picture group on Braddock, Overland and Braddock, they used to do birthdays on like Tuesday night. And a guy named Walter Smith asked me if I would give him his cake for 22 years. And I was honored to do that. And on coming down off of the stage after they'd finished singing happy birthday and all that stuff, he put his arm around me and he said, son, if you just keep doing what you're doing, one of these days you're going to be normal. And I thought, how does he know? How does he know? See? Today, last thing I did before my daughter and I drove over here is I kind of leaned my little face out of the car window and I kissed my bride. And she and I have been married for 28 years. And I was scared. You know, I was scared, oh, God's going to send me an ugly one. And God sent me a full-on hottie, you know. She's sober 27 years. Here's my daughter. She's sitting down here, and she's, how old are you now? 30 what? 32? And sober 17 years. I got a son, he's 27, and he's sober 5 years. You know? And I keep telling all of them, if we just can hang in for 3 or 4 more years, we'll be a family with 100. You know? I have a business that allows me to be of service to people all over the planet. I literally could leave this room right now with nothing but what I'm wearing and what I'm carrying, and I could go all over the earth and never have to stay in a hotel and never have to pay for a meal. I mean, all over the world. I have watched this thing that we're involved with. I was in a meeting in Jerusalem, and there's 3 little Jewish people and 3 little Arab people and me. And they're all getting along, crying and hugging and all that shit, just no different than right here. See? It's pretty amazing. And all I got to do to get all this stuff is get up in the morning, ask God to help me get through today, not take a drink, not go out of my way deliberately or accidentally and harm anyone, try to help some people, go to sleep at night. That's all I got to do. I'm still struggling with the, and when we were wrong, promptly admit it part, but I think I'll get that done sooner or later. I've run out of time. I want to thank Sean for asking me. There's a price, however, and he knows it. I used to do this all the time, and then I realized some of my months were spent, 30-day months, speaking 15 times, and I thought that was a little excessive. And I don't say no, but I do put 2 secretaries between me and you, and I threaten. And Sean knows that one of these days I'm going to get a call from somebody, and they're going to be looking for a speaker in San Luis Obispo on a Wednesday night at 6. And it's you, dude. Thank you.